What if I lose my job? I know I might sound like a downer, but these are all very practical and possible scenarios. So yeah, I got laid off from my six-figure job. It was part of a so-called company restructure where about 1,300 or 1,400 employees got laid off. Now, right after that, I was feeling anxious, stressed, confused, a lot of shame, feeling a little stupid. But most of all, I was relieved and kind of happy actually. Now, you might be wondering, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Why would anyone be happy with getting laid off? Well, there's a story behind this and a few reasons too. And so that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. And to be fair, I kind of saw this coming. In the sense, I knew there was a layoff fast approaching, but whether I would be part of it or not was anyone's guess, because it really all just comes down to numbers or balance sheets, to be honest. For anyone who's been laid off, just know that that's just how they decided. It's very numbers oriented. They're trying to improve their quarterly metrics or their annual metrics. And so don't give yourself a tough time. It's not a reflection of your work ethic or your performance. It's almost like a message I'm trying to tell myself, because right after I got laid off, I was feeling really, really shitty. Someone very close to me works in ops and strategy for one of the biggest banks here in Canada. And this person's team sometimes is tasked with doing these activities, figuring out who needs to get laid off to kind of really improve their numbers for the approaching quarterly report. And so I know firsthand how these things happen. And keeping that in mind, one of the biggest reasons where I felt like I would be laid off next was because I was easily the highest paid employee at my level on the floor. Like for instance, I was fairly familiar with what a few others on the floor were getting paid, a few of my colleagues. And so I knew that I was at least 15 to 20% more than most people at that level in my company. So if someone had to get axed, I think the odds were not stacked in my favor. So yeah, I was fairly certain that there was going to be a layoff soon at the company because, as you might have seen from some of my previous videos, I'd gotten really good at studying the fundamentals and the technicals of companies I invest in. And so I'd done a basic assessment to see how this company was faring, the one I was part of. And I realized that it wasn't doing too well. To be honest, it still isn't doing too well. And so there was a pattern emerging, right? Every single time that they announced their annual results or numbers, there'd be a layoff. Like in my time at the company, there were, I think, 3 layoffs in 13 months. 3 freaking layoffs in 13 months. That to the previous year's layoffs around the same time was almost 5,000 employees. Like, what the fuck? 5,000 employees. I even had this colleague who's also my good friend who used to keep an eye on everything happening with the company in terms of, whether some random team in the massive company started laying off people because this person was well connected, and whether there were any updates on Reddit threads stating that they were laying off more people. That very same person was laid off with me too. Anyway, I'm sure you've seen that layoffs have become such a common thing at the moment. Like for instance, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and I see layoff updates constantly. And it just sickens me that this is the world we live in right now, where this has become almost normalized. It's insane. Anyway, I don't even know how these companies are getting away with this. My wife keeps saying that it should be legal for people to do this, for companies to do this, but it is what it is, I guess. And yeah, so it's actually been a while since the layoff. And since then, I've thought long and hard about putting out a video on this topic. To be honest, right after it actually happened, but I wasn't entirely sure of how to put this across, and I didn't even know what to address in this video. I even had a trip to India for my sister's wedding, lots of emotions running through my head, and most of all, I was super confused as to what to do with my life and how I'm supposed to be handling this. Anyway, once I got the axe, I started thinking of my next moves, started worrying about what I'd do to get paid here. I of course stayed up numerous nights contemplating, thinking through things, and really just consoling myself that it wasn't really my fault. I also started getting really nervous about how to break the news to everyone around me. It was pretty messed up, to be honest. But at the same time, I was pretty composed, fairly composed through it all, to be honest. So I'll give you an example, right? So right when I was getting laid off, literally the meeting when my leader was breaking the news to me, and as HR was walking me through their formalities, I actually asked her to give me a minute and step away to get some water to drink. I came out of the room, pretty calmly told my wife that this is what happened. Of course, she was shocked, and then I literally just went back to the room and completed the formalities the HR lady mentioned. And yeah, there were a mixture of emotions running through my head at that moment. But like I mentioned at the beginning, I was relieved and pretty happy by the end of this. It did take me some time to get to the point where I was kind of relieved, but it was like a mixture, an amalgamation of, these different feelings. And to be honest, there were few reasons for that. For instance, I joined this company a few years ago, and initially I got to work on some exciting projects and also got enough freedom to run with them. And then the last year, there was some org restructure, and that completely messed things up for me. I wasn't liking the work I was doing, the discussions I was having with my team. It almost felt like I was doing something so monotonous and almost pointless, to be honest. And my team lead wasn't helping in any way either. Like, for instance, here's an example, right? I was forced to work on the same deck for 4.5 months. Like the same freaking deck. It went through like 37 iterations. Yeah, I actually counted. I actually had a version control on my system. And sure, having freedom and some autonomy are important things for any job, but I cannot stress the importance of them for the product manager. Someone who has to kind of steer the direction of a product. Otherwise, the whole thing just becomes corporate bureaucracy. Anyway, I'm not getting into bad-mouthing my team or company because, to be honest, culture and people-wise, it was a great place to work. But with all these challenges I mentioned with the actual work, I was just happy that I didn't have to go back to my job and I could instead focus on exploring other opportunities. And another reason I was happy is because, I'm an entrepreneur first. Like I mentioned time and again on different videos. And so prior to moving to Canada, I was completely self-employed, where my content strategy and media business, Unimedia, was my entire day gig, was my bread and butter. And so while joining this role, I had promised myself and my wife, who constantly pushes me to be better, that this was just going to be a stepping stone while moving countries. Especially with things being super expensive here in Canada, I had to get a day job. And so I promised to only be employed for 2 years, just after which I coincidentally got laid off. And I'm not gonna lie, the job actually gave me exposure to the Canadian style of working. It paid my bills. It was a 6-figure job, so it was great. It served my purpose. It had a bunch of benefits that came with it. But through the course, I knew I was supposed to be building something of my own. That was always the end goal. But comfort has a sneaky way of creeping in. My aim to scale Unimedia took a back seat, while I should have actually been focusing on that all along. And so this was almost like fate kicking me in the groin and setting things right and getting me back on track. And so now I actually had two choices, right? I could look for another job or scale my business like I'd always planned. Now with all this, you might think that the choice is obvious with having that 2-year goal, having a business that I can count on and make some serious money. But I right away started looking for another job. Like I said, comfort is just a sneaky motherfucker. And so there are quite a few things that happened right after, some massive mistakes I made too, which, to be honest, I'll talk about in detail in another video because I don't want to sidetrack this topic or this video. And so yeah, the layoff affected me more than I thought it would, but I didn't shed a single tear because the company is obviously not going to shed a single tear on my behalf, and they only care about themselves. And so of course I wasn't going to shed a tear or let it affect me that much, at least. But not gonna lie, it did affect me. It was a pretty tough phase. And if you're sitting there thinking that your company is any different and your company cares for you, it's a family and all of that, I'm sorry to break it to you, but you're delusional. All these companies only care about themselves. Their sole purpose is to keep going and keep functioning. How do you balance the numbers? How do you ensure that they're profitable quarter on quarter? How can they keep their stocks inflated as much? That's all they care about. Don't assume that just because you've been at a company for long enough or they treat you with, a little differently, that your company is any different. Companies, don't treat them like your family. It's all part of what it takes to keep the business going, I guess. And since I saw this coming with my company, I was kind of prepared and kind of calmish through the whole experience, I guess. And right now, layoffs have become so normal at this point. And yeah, sure, people blame the economy, but I'm certain that things are only going to get worse from here. Like, the world is changing so fast right now. You might be thinking, back in the tech boom and the tech bubble, the world is changing fast as well. Yes, but right now, it's very unprecedented. And I'm sure you felt it too. And we know that tomorrow is going to be a very different kind of tomorrow. And if you're trying to kind of base the future on everything that's happened in the past, probably not a good comparison. And the more you kind of think about this, you kind of go down this rabbit hole, like not sure about what the future holds. Is AI coming for our jobs? Are layoffs going to be happening on a weekly basis? And I've felt it numerous times, and I've tried my best to ignore it as much as possible because it gets really overwhelming. And I'm fairly certain that that's what you'd be doing too. The world has changed drastically with the AI revolution, and my belief is that most of the work is going to become contract work, like how a movie is made, right? Like for you to make a movie, you need a producer, you need a director, you need a writer, you need someone who can handle screenplay, lighting, cinematography, music and whatnot, and you hire all of these people on a contract basis, knowing fully well that the end goal is to get the movie made. And so contract work is what I believe where the world's heading. And just looking at how things are drastically changing right now, I don't think you'll see a future where you'd have the same person spending 20, 25, 30 years, their entire career at a single company. I don't think that's ever going to exist probably from tomorrow. Again, I could be wrong. There could be pockets of economies where this might continue to exist. But most work, I believe, is going to be contract based, which kind of means that you are your own boss. So I feel like people like freelancers, contractors, entrepreneurs who basically have strong networks are going to thrive in the coming few years. So if you're thinking that this is a bubble or a phase and we're going to get past it very soon, I'd say don't hold your breath, because I'm fairly certain, having studied the macroeconomics and listened to some of the smartest people out there, that the world is definitely going to change. So I think it's all the more reason for us to equip ourselves, because no company is going to care for you, or at least not the way companies so-called care for you in the past. Just remember that your company is not your family. Your company is definitely not your family. There are a lot of people that say that my team's my family, my company is my family. No, they're not. Please don't confuse your professional life with your personal life. And I would even say that this is the same thing with inflation too. Like, things are freaking expensive right now. And it's not just something I notice here in Canada. I notice the same thing in the US. I notice the same thing in Europe, where I came from a few years ago. India as well, the same thing. Things are freaking expensive. And I honestly think it's only going to get more expensive from here, and at a rate that's unprecedented. So in my honest opinion, you need to figure out more ways to make money. That's the only way. Like, if you're playing the capitalism game, which again, whether you like it or not, you are playing this game. You are part of the capitalism game. And so the only way for you to win at a capitalism game or fight the money game is with more money. That is honestly the only way, in my opinion. For instance, I'll give you an example of how capitalism has programmed or wired every single employed individual on earth. Like, you can't tell me down to the cent how much you're going to spend the next month, because obviously that changes every single month. But you can tell me with confidence how much you're going to get paid though, because that's how capitalism works. You know for the fact that the maximum you can earn in a particular month is basically your salary divided by 12 or whatever, if it's a monthly pay, right? On the flip side, if you need to spend more, there's no one else taking care of that for you. So I get it that this is how the world has functioned, but the only way for you to kind of equip yourselves and be ready for a situation like this, an unprecedented situation and a future like this, is that you have to play the capitalism game. That's just the world we live in. And so what I'm trying to really say is that you need to adopt a completely different mindset and figure out how you can make more money. And I really think just relying on one job, while it may have worked in the past and is the safe route, is clearly not working now. And because of just how the world is changing, it's definitely not going to work tomorrow, I think. Like, if you want to live a basic middle class life, great. But if you're ambitious and you're trying to do so much with your life, that is just not going to fly. It's not going to get you to where you want to be. And so you need to be prepared before it happens to you. And by being prepared, I mean you could be so well connected with people in the industry that you're working in that you're top of mind for a particular role, or you land a role soon, even if you lose your job. Another way you could do this is have another source of income that could eventually replace your day job, or if anything, at least give you some padding, and have a clear plan for how you're going to navigate all of them. Personally, I checked off most of these boxes, right? Like, I was fairly well connected in the product space, or at least I started connecting with people. And so I started getting a few offers. But at the same time, I also had income from my media house that could at least set me up for some success in the future. And also because I could kind of see this coming, I had a fairly clear plan as to what I needed to do the day after it happened. And so yeah, a big reason why I waited to publish was to think through how I could package all of this. Like, I didn't want this to just be another video where I'm just personally talking about everything that happened with my layoff. But I think that the world is changing, and not just me, all of us need to kind of get equipped or prepare ourselves for the future. Like, I see how most people are so reliant on their day jobs with no plan B, and I just think that's just putting yourself at a disadvantage. And while it might be okay if you're in your 20s or 30s, but when you eventually start a family and you want to settle down, it's going to hit you even harder. Like, I know of a few people who are in their 40s and 50s who are facing the same challenges I'm facing right now. Anyway, once you kind of adopt that mindset, which I'm trying my best to adopt, this is almost like me just talking to myself, telling my younger self that this is what you need to do. So I'm just trying my best to look at the bright side here. And so one bit is that there was a lot of hearsay that the company I was working for had an issue with me working on my side hustle or a business, basically anything outside my day job. And so I chose to not talk about everything publicly I've been doing with my venture with Unimedia, as well as another business venture that actually hit the floor recently. You'll actually soon hear a lot more about this in the coming videos. But yeah, now I can openly talk about all these things and break down how I founded these ventures, the challenges I'm going through, how did I go from 0 to 1 and scale profitably as a side hustle, and then made me some money and then some, all while having this set job. Because quite a few people have messaged me on Instagram and LinkedIn to chat about their own side hustles or ventures, because I think they are also trying their best to make a little bit of money on the side or figure out how they can maybe quit their day job and focus on this full time. And so if you're actually one of them who has something going for yourselves or is planning on doing something of your own, then you'll definitely find the upcoming videos exciting and knowledgeable. And actually, if you need help with setting this up, reach out to me, because I'm actually putting together a small entrepreneurial group who want to build something profitable on the side or go full time into their business. Actually, you can email me or DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn and we can get chatting. I just think that I didn't talk about my ventures, and so even marketing, the business was a big challenge, and now I'm facing, the ramifications or the repercussions of that. And so at this point with my media business, I'm actually reaching out to a lot of people. It's a lot more cold outreach. But a few years ago, I just had an inbound, like a surge of leads coming to me, asking us to help out with their content strategy and content creation and production and whatnot. Anyway, going back to the top, if you have actually been through a layoff, or you're apprehensive about layoffs, or have had someone near and dear to you get laid off, just know that you're not alone. Like, a lot of people are going through the very same feeling. And now I can proudly say that your boy is also one of them. I'm sure this is something to be proud of, but like I said, I'm going to look at things in the most positive light possible. But if there's one thing to take away from this video, it's that you need to be prepared. Because the world is changing, and only folks who have the foresight to be prepared are going to thrive in the next decade or two. Thanks for watching. And like I said, you're not alone, but let's kill it together.